All right, traders, this is Christian from Market Trade Group, and it is Thursday, June 10th. Risk disclaimer is not in front of you, but everything that we're going over is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. This will be a quick video, guys, because I'm on semi-vacation, just taking the next couple days and a couple days in the beginning of next week, and just getting a little bit of vacation. So let me just go through a couple of today's themes that I wanted to go through. First of all, S&P chart in front of you. There's not much to really talk about here. We were up 40 basis points. One of the big stories, I guess, that you're going to hear a lot is just one of those things that I think that we needed to kind of get over, which was the CPI report. It did come out a little bit higher than expected, but I think everybody knows that there's inflation right now. I would be shocked if the report actually came in lighter than expectations, given what everybody's been talking about. And remember with the market, it's basically what is already expected. And if everybody kind of expects inflation, I think that's why you had today's reaction. Keep in mind, next week we've got a lot of events. We've got the PPI report, which is another gauge of inflation that people will be looking at. Then you have quadruple witching, and you have a Fed meeting. So for now, we're kind of just watching these rotations take place. S&P grinded up 44 basis points. That is a new record, new closing high for the S&P. So while this is kind of a slow grind and back and forth price action, this is what we've been doing all week. This morning, once again, you try to go higher. It's very difficult to chase in this market right now. One of the things that we've been kind of talking about over the last couple of weeks is, if you're going to chase a little bit of price action, the way that I've been kind of doing it is was just chase very lightly, a small position, and then wait for price to kind of come back into you. That's really been, if you look at this price action over the last couple of weeks, you can't chase, with any major size, into price action that looks pretty good. All right, so that's for the S&P. Let's go over to the, let's talk about the Qs for a minute. The Qs outperformed today, up 1%. So we did take out that upside VPOC. So these are the two upside targets that I had mentioned just about a week ago. I was on Bloomberg, right, and mentioned, and you could see that video on my YouTube page. But there was two targets that we talked about. This 340, which is what we took out right on the right around the open, and then we also took out this target, right? So it doesn't mean that we can't go higher here, because this index is looking pretty constructive right now. But we'll see if price can just kind of jump over that, right? That 1 hour VPOC. But I would watch how that works. Small caps, which were really strong, seeing a little bit of a rotation out of them. And then if you kind of look across sectors, and within groups, right? That's where it really gets interesting. The first chart that I'll talk about here is IWD versus IWF, right? That this has been a big theme of 2021, that rotation into value. In this chart that you're looking at, large cap value is in the numerator and growth is in the denominator. So you could actually see right now we're seeing this push back into some growth areas of the market. Right, they are outperforming. And let's specifically talk about some of those underperformers. If you want to look at, the industrials, right? There's certain areas in the industrials that are starting to kind of break down a little bit, right? The first one that we saw was Deere, right? When we've talked about this Deere, that has been in a huge uptrend, right? Well, now it's seeing a correction at this point, right? Once this thing broke the 50-day moving average, I know some people, don't like moving averages on their charts for whatever reason. They think that they can do without them. But I'll tell you, a lot of times it gives you a really good signal. For instance, look at how well this Deere has honored the 50-day moving average all the way up, right? Well, now you got the first break of it, basically since the pandemic, and we're starting to see this correct down. So that was going on. That's been going on for a while in Deere. Caterpillar kind of joined that today. right? So that had a huge day to the downside, down about 3.8%, right? So other sectors too that are seeing this bit of correction, the home builders, right? We've talked about for a couple of weeks now that they just haven't looked right, right? They made this crazy top, and they've been coming in pretty hard. So my comment has been with some of these areas that acted so well a few months ago, let them come in, and I think that just like we've talked about rotations. What you want to see when you see certain areas like this in the market breaking down, you want to see, just not the whole market breaking down. You want to see a rotation into some other, into some other places. And for now, that's kind of what we're seeing, right? So, for example, if you look at IGV, this is the software ETF. Big move today, up 1.7%. If you want to look at some cyber names too. They have been really strong. We'll bring up a chart of CrowdStrike, which is, had earnings. We talked about CrowdStrike in the pre-market session this morning. One of the things that I specifically said was it's been now a few days, right? So sometimes, like after an earnings report, even though they didn't have bad earnings, right? It just kind of was a bad reaction. But sometimes it takes a little bit of wait and see, right? They call that the 3-day rule, after a name reports earnings. But this is resolving to the upside, so this looks really good, I think. And of course, the leader in the group, which continues to get very little attention, is this Fortinet, right? So I've been talking about this name, for the last couple months. I had a trade on. I took it off. I did not roll it. I guess I should have rolled the trade, but this thing has been really, really stellar, right? And then a couple of the semiconductors are also breaking out too. ASML, ADI, which I took a trade today in ADI. This is a name that we talked about right after they reported earnings, which was a couple weeks ago. Even this was a real nice move, a little bit of digestion, and is starting to break out. So even though I feel a little bit late getting into this one, I think that you basically haven't traveled too far from the breakout zone. So I'm in this thing, and I think some of this group is acting pretty decently. Not every semiconductor, but there's some good names within the group. Also, what was particularly notable, I saw a lot of names in the medical devices group. They were up 1.8% for the day, so very strong. Oh, last cyber name, this CYBR is acting very well too. All right, so that's another one. And I think overall, the whole medical device group, ISRG, which has kind of taken its time since it reported good earnings report, is starting to resolve higher. One of my favorite setups within the group is this STAA. Right, this has also been a nice outperformer. Putting in, I know this is a little bit abstract, but a little bit abstract charting, but kind of a cup and handle and then out. And then another smaller, I see another cup handle, and I think this thing resolves higher. Right, so I think pretty darn good. Going back to that software growth space, besides Crowd, Zscaler, that's a name that we've talked about a couple times in the trading room. Made a real nice move today too. So again, industrials, materials, home builders, some of those things, maybe seeing rotation out of banks too, which I didn't cover, but we can certainly look at XLF too. Big move down 1.2%. Right, so something's going down again, something's going up. So we continue to have this market where not everything is all going up, right? Earlier in the week, obviously, it was just basically the memes that were going crazy. Now it's different again. So it continues to, change, and it continues to evolve. So one of the things that we've been talking about is just, how nimble you have to be in this market. And if you one area, one group, you got to continue to monitor it, right? You can't necessarily rest easy. I also manage what's called the TTG Trend Portfolio, which is a trend trading, just straight stock portfolio where we've got about 30 names. And I made some changes today, because I've been long a lot of a lot of materials, industrials, a lot of value type areas. But if I need to rotate into some more growth areas, that's kind of what I started to do today, just to kind of move those things around. Datadog is another one that looks very interesting. We'll see if this can get above the 200-day moving average, right? So there's literally about like 10 other names that I could go through here, but I think that this is also interesting. Right, Amazon with a big day. Now there's a virgin point of control that's got to get through, but up 2%. We just haven't really seen that strong performance from Amazon. So maybe this is a little bit of a beginning of the move. So we know that Prime Day is also coming up too. So it could be a little bit of now Prime, move into Prime Day. Also, Google, which I sent out earlier, and I had a nice little trade that I did, right around the open in this one. But this has taken its sweet time with breaking out, and this one has resolved higher as well. Further, if you look in the growth space, this Unity software finally is above its 200-day move. It doesn't have a 200-day moving average yet, does it? Just 50-day moving average. So again, it has a little bit more work to do. You could see that VPOC, that red line right in front of it. But I think this is starting to look a bit more constructive. Again, has really, required some patience and some confirmation. And I think now you have some confirmation, right? You really haven't had that. I've talked about this name a ton over the last few months and about avoiding this name. Well, now it's finally, you could see what's going on here. Prices above these moving averages. First time it's really done that since all the way back in February, right? That was the last time that this thing was really above all the moving averages. So I think this looks pretty constructive, and it's definitely one that I'm going to be watching. And then just finally, let's see, did I have any other names that I wanted to go over? The biotech group, I went long biotech the other day. I haven't been able to hit my first target yet, but again, I think it's looking constructive. So, I think it would be one thing considering all these things that are going down, like the groups that we've mentioned, but it looks like this is so far straight rotation. Into more growth, more riskier areas. If you want to look at this ARK Innovation ETF, almost back above the 200-day moving average, right? Again, just a proxy. This is not my favorite group of growth stocks. As you can see, it's been an underperformer over the last few months, but something to just kind of keep an eye on is for a proxy of super high growth names. All right, guys, so we will finish up here for the day. Again, like I said, short and video because I am away, but some interesting things developing, right, in growth land. One other name too, I knew there was one other name that I wanted to mention too. A lot of option activity in growth names. Twitter saw a lot of August positioning in calls. So we saw that basically all day today in terms of more high growth call activity, right? And the space does feel like it's a little bit, I don't want to say under-owned, but possibly, right? The only thing I would watch as if you're repositioning in some of these growth areas, what we like to look for is what's called virgin point of controls, which I've mentioned a lot on the daily chart. But here's a good example of one, right? There's 217, but notice where this thing kind of stopped for the day. So again, there's a lot of overhead supply with these names, right? So there's one right there at 205. So we're going to be kind of faced with that, right? So if this thing can get above, call it 206, you got a little bit open road, right? The virgin point of controls are, again, pivots areas where a lot of buyers and sellers have previously met up. It's the highest volume in a given period that price is not revisited. So once you get over those and they don't end up being a roadblock, it usually leads to good things. But price has to get above there. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow.